Evening, everybody, and welcome to lesson two. Looks like we made through lesson one all right. Everything looked okay for what I have submitted so far. Again, I did extend the deadline. I just didn't know what was going to go on with all the weather, and me not being in South Carolina and being in Tennessee, I just wanted to make sure and exercise an abundant amount of caution. So there were a couple of you that did not get the assignments in by the original due date, which obviously that's fine. So those due dates have been extended so that everything is there for you to get completed. If you got any questions, let me know. Be more than happy to work with you. But again, we're just going to go ahead and jump into this material tonight for lesson two. Get through this lecture. I don't think it'll take more than 15 or 20 minutes. It is a very basic operation of law enforcement. This is something that can be completed using patrol officers usually, and kind of know your personnel, know who's capable of what. But as team leader, it can get a little more complicated than the lecture is going to be tonight. So a lot of things that you'll gain through experience. Obviously, in a lecture, I can't really cover anything that could go wrong on a crime scene or the scene of a search warrant, whatever the situation may be. But that ability to problem solve usually comes with a lot of experience, and that's why you don't want to be the team leader out on your first search. I kind of had that happen to me one time. It was a pretty harrowing experience, and luckily I had a lot of good folks with me that were very capable and could advise me on decisions I need to make and things of that nature. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump on in this. I want to walk through. There are 6 really basic steps to basic crime scene processing, and again, this is not going to involve collection of DNA, fingerprints. We're not going to talk about any of those advanced forensic techniques. We're simply going to talk about what steps you need to go through really to walk onto the scene to make sure it's secure all the way through at the end of the day when you're writing the report, or maybe even the next business day. We're going to talk about that towards the end. So the first step of this whole process is going to be brief your plan, and this is a very important step of the process. It's where everybody's going to be on the same page. And generally, you need to have a very good format. You need to have things written down, and you need to make those part of your case file. And so this crime scene processing needs to go in the case file. For me, it always worked best if you went by each step in the process. And so we're basically going to walk through chronologically from when we arrive on the scene to when we complete the report. And yes, there is going to be a plan to complete the report and make sure everybody has in what they need to have turned in to you, so that the documentation thereof of your search is done complete. The second thing I want to do is make sure we're covering any equipment we may need. And again, we're not going to get into advanced procedures, any type of like blood spatter or any advanced photography that you may need to go on, computer forensics, things of that nature. We need to talk about what that equipment is, and we need to make sure that certain personnel are bringing everything they need to get the job done. If you're working in a large city and you get on the other side of town and it's going to take somebody an hour one way just to go grab something out of the office that you forgot, that's not going to go very well. I work in a small town now, so it would be 10 or 15 minutes across town, which still is just going to kind of kill your search. You just don't want to go through that, so make sure you get all the equipment that you need. You also want to make sure that all the team members know their role. If you're working through the plan and you can't figure out anything for an officer to do, then it would be a good idea just to put that officer on call and say, if something pops up, we'll call you, but other than that, go work on something else. Last thing you'll want is 2 or 3 people standing around in the scene, just not really anything to do. We're all type A personalities. We'll probably find something to do if that's, you can read into that how you want, but you want to make sure everybody understands their role. They have a very distinct role, and they know what their instinct looks like. So that's really the brief in a nutshell. Obviously, this can take a while to put together and to make sure you have everything covered, but it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared, in my opinion. Step 2, once we've arrived on the scene, the second step would be to secure the scene. Okay, we're not talking about a tactical operation here. That's an entirely different class. Let's just go ahead and say someone else has done the tactical securing of the scene for you. The scene has been deemed safe. All threats have been taken care of, and it's pretty much easy to walk onto the scene. And that's really what this class is about. So we're going to talk about how to secure the scene. The best way to secure the scene would be to surround it with law enforcement officers. This would be a high-profile scene if you've got 4 or 5 officers to surround the house, put one in each corner, whatever that may be. Obviously, that's just not going to happen a whole lot. While it's the best technique, taking 4 or 5 officers and paying them either overtime or taking them off patrol and putting them on a house, that's not a good idea. If it's a high-profile homicide, that may be a different story. But if we're just talking a run-of-the-mill search for narcotics or something of that nature, then we're probably not going to get the manpower to be able to do that. So that leads us to our second type, which is crime scene tape. I argue that crime scene tape must be made out of the strongest stuff in the world because it can hold back a Christmas parade if need to. People would change direction to go about it because nobody wants to break through that tape. But everybody understands that if they go under the tape or they break through the tape, they're probably going to be charged with some type of violation, and rightfully so. So crime scene tape is going to work very well. Make sure you give yourself a buffer so that if someone does decide they want to break through or come under, it shouldn't be a victim's family or just somebody from the media, that if they do break through that, then whoever's working your entry-exit log, which we're going to talk about in just a second, whoever that officer is has the ability to interdict them away from the scene, that they don't actually make it into the scene, destroy any evidence, or be documented by the media as busting up into your crime scene, and you don't have a secure scene. So make sure you leave yourself that buffer with the crime scene tape. The last part of securing the scene is the entry-exit log. And so what you want to do is you want to set up one entry-exit point to your scene. You don't want to have multiple. That can create a mess. I'm sure it could happen if you've got a big enough scene. At some point you may have to do that. But let's just stick with simple right now and say we're going to have one entry and exit point with our crime scenes. And so at that point we're going to have a law enforcement officer who's going to be completing an entry-exit log. What goes on the entry-exit log? Okay, first off, the person, the time that they're coming in, the time that they're going out, and then this last part's pretty important. Their reason for being there. You want to document why people are there. That's going to, if they don't have a reason for being there and they can't tell you what that reason is for you to put on the crime scene log, well, they probably shouldn't be on the crime scene. You want to limit who all comes onto this scene. We don't want a bunch of people just walking through just because they're nosy. That's not going to work. Okay, so if you've got a supervisor who says, I need to see the scene, you're probably going to go ahead and let that happen, and put, the reason for them being there is in a supervisory capacity. They can testify to that. There's no problem with that. And there may be some defense attorney somewhere that may have an issue with that and want to put them up on the stand. More power to them. Go for it. But at the end of the day, we want to document why people are there. We don't want it to appear that people are just coming on the scene just to look around. That's just not a good look for your search. So that's how we're going to secure the scene. That's going to lead us into our next step. Once the scene is deemed secure, before anyone goes in, we're going to send the team leader in. That would be you in your practical exercise here in a little bit. So when you go in, you're going to take your photographer with you. And that person obviously needs to be somebody that's very good with a camera. It does not have to be a professional photographer, but it does need somebody that has a little bit of advanced training using a camera. We all can take good pictures with our iPhone, but these pictures are not for Facebook or Instagram. These are different. Adjusting the aperture, adjusting the shutter speed, the ISO. These are complicated things. And, a lot of y'all out there are probably saying, well, what the heck are all those things exactly? We don't want somebody taking pictures thinking that these, again, are for Facebook. These are very important photos. So we're gonna designate someone as a photographer that has an idea of what's going on. So they're going to go in with us. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take entry photos. These photos are very important. These are the scene. These are the pictures of the scene before the search team searched it. Now, the SWAT team may have been in there, jacked a bunch of stuff up, gotten into an altercation with somebody on the scene. EMTs may have had to come in. Firefighters may have had to come in. We want to document the scene in as pristine a position as possible. This is it before we searched. Okay, so we can't get it before anybody got there. That would not be a likely scenario. But we can get the entry photos taken of every room in the home before we touched anything and began to process the scene. Next thing we want to do is secure any evidence that can be easily destroyed. So if you've opened the front door and there is a firearm laying right there in the front door, then you're going to need to secure that evidence. Number one, so it's safe, and number two, we want to photograph that firearm before it gets moved, kicked, shoved, stepped on, anything crazy like that. We need to get that evidence processed. A more likely scenario would be DNA in a doorway. If there's DNA in a doorway, we don't want people stepping on it, walking over it, any of their DNA contaminating that. So we're just going to go ahead and process that before it gets destroyed. Last thing we want to do is, obviously now we are getting to see the scene in a state that maybe somebody took a wall out. A lot of times when you go search certain locations, you'll be able to find somebody and say, hey, you took a call in this house 3 years ago. What's the inside look like? Oh, hey, look, this thing's on Realtor.com where it was sold 4 years ago. Let's look at the pictures of the inside of the house and see what they look like. So there's a lot of different ways we can collect intel on scenes before we get there. But obviously people change their homes. They move stuff around. They take walls out. They remodel. They become pack rats. So once we walk into this scene and we see everything, at that point we'll be able to adjust the plan as necessary. Maybe put an officer searching in one room that really doesn't have anything in it. Put that officer in the kitchen with another officer that's obviously going to need some help. There's just a bunch of stuff to go through there. So we're going to adjust the plan, and that's the last step of our team leader walkthrough. Once we come back out, that's when we're going to actually put everybody into the home or the business, the outdoor crime scene, whatever it may be, and that's where we're going to begin our search. Searchers need to use technique. You would think that you would be able to go through a bedroom in a home and keep track of what you've searched, what you haven't searched, where you've looked. The biggest problem with keeping people on task now are these things. These things get people confused and they lose track of where they are. They did I lift the mattress? Yeah, I think I lifted the mattress. Okay, so you're not going to be able to keep officers off their phone. They have cases they've got to work too. So they're going to be on the phone. The thing that they've got to do is use a technique. Whatever that technique may be, who knows. But my favorite was always left to right and then top to bottom. So if I were searching a bookshelf, I would start at the left, top, and I would work my way over, and then I would come back in a typewriter format and then go down as I went. That would always seem to work well for me, and I would do the same thing across the room. Some people use a circular method where they start in the center of the room and they draw a circle and they move further out into the room as they go. That one would work too. It always got kind of confusing for me. I'd get a little dizzy. The last one would be a grid search. So you would lay the room into grids, maybe bring your own string, lay the grids out, and then search the different grid areas. However you do it, that's fine, but you just have to use a technique. The next thing we want to do is, once we locate the evidence, we have to properly secure and process it. So number one, that's going to be photographs. Sometimes you're going to move evidence and you're not going to realize it's evidence until after you've moved it. Sit it down. Hey, this is where I moved it. This is where I originally located it. Let's photograph that. Hopefully you can see the evidence before you move it, and you can photograph it in its actual location before you touched it. The next thing we got to do is package the evidence. We're not going to talk exactly a whole lot about how to package evidence. That in and of itself is a whole other class. But we are going to package it properly to secure any fingerprints, any DNA, any latent evidence, unseen evidence that's going to be processed by the lab. We want to process that properly just so that they can get their job done and it doesn't get contaminated or destroyed. The last thing we're going to have to do with this evidence is create an evidence log. Each entry on the evidence log gets the following. Number one, who found it. Number two, where they found it. Number three, what time they found it. Okay, it has to have all three of those things on there. And then the last thing is we want to write down the disposition of the evidence and where is it located. That may not go onto the actual evidence log, but it needs to go into the report at the end of the search. We need to make sure a couple of things also happen during the whole search. Number one, the team members stick to their assignments. You may be searching the storage room that just doesn't have any evidence in it. It's boring, it's hot, it's dusty, it's just not a whole lot of fun. And your buddy across the way is finding all kinds of craziness, and he's like, man, you gotta come look at this. Okay, it's okay to go look, but you need to get back to your assignment as quickly as possible. And so if you've got officers who are rushing through assignments just so they can get into the good place to search, that's not a good thing, because there may be one or two little things in there that can really help your case. And so officers have to stick to their assignments. Typically, they're really good about that. So as a team leader, you just don't have to worry about that a whole lot, but every once in a while you may run into a situation where you see that happening. And that leads me to my next point. The team leader needs to supervise. So if you see that stuff happening, hey man, how's it going in the storage room? Are you finding anything? Oh yeah, it's okay. Hey, would you care to go look in here? I feel like there may be something in there. You can't be a tyrant about it, but you have to be the supervisor. Here's the thing though. If you've started to search and you've played into this whole game, then you can't necessarily supervise properly. So as team leader, don't try not to give yourself too many assignments once the search starts. Give yourself the ability to walk around and supervise. Not that you're the best at this and that you're the grand poobah of the whole thing, just that you need to be the one that just kind of sees the whole scene. Okay, and if you could put blinders on and you're working in one room while everybody else is working in the house and you never see what else is going on, then obviously you're not going to be able to search. So the next step that we need to talk about is the team leader walkthrough 2. Okay, so we had team leader walkthrough 1 at the beginning. Let's talk about team leader walkthrough 2. Basically, we're going to, after everybody's searched and they said they've searched, then everybody's going to go ahead and exit the scene except for you and the photographer again. And you're going to basically recheck everything. First thing you're going to do is, once you're done with everything, you want to take exit photos. This is how we left the scene. Everybody's seen the Hollywood movies where the guys are picking up mattresses and slashing them open, and they're taking drawers out and they're dumping them on the floor and kicking them. We don't do that. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though. We search some pretty rough places sometimes. And a lot of times these places are possibly rented. And so we get there and there's a lot of damage. There's holes in the wall. There's windows busted out. There's just a lot of damage. And so we could get blamed for that damage because everybody sees that that's how people search in Hollywood. So it'd be easy for a tenant to look at a landlord and say, I didn't bust that window out. They did. They threw that stuff out the window. They kicked the hole in the door because the bedroom door was locked, so they kicked it in. I didn't do that. Charge it to the police department. That happens, and so a landlord will come to the police department and say, hey, you guys busted up my place. You're going to have to pay for this. Well, sir, here's the entry photo. Here's the exit photo. As you can see, the hole in the door is in both. When we got there, the hole was there. When we left, the hole was there. We didn't put the hole there. And so that way, that person, that landlord, can take them to civil court, whatever they may be, and get that taken care of with them. It's not a us problem. So that's kind of sad, but that's why we do exit photos. We're also going to look for any evidence not found. Believe it or not, we miss stuff. And so I've never been a part of a team leader walkthrough 2 and not found something that we didn't secure. A lot of times it was, I don't know, maybe let's just go ahead and take it just to be sure. It's never really been the gun or anything crazy like that, but we obviously kind of find something that we decide that maybe we should take on that last walkthrough. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to check for any equipment we've left behind. We don't want to leave any photo markers, any forms. We just don't want to leave stuff behind. We want to make sure this scene is sterile from us. It doesn't look like we were here. And so we're going to go ahead and make sure we've got all of our equipment. At that point, you're ready to transport your evidence. You're ready to leave the scene. And so you're going to take the evidence to your evidence control technician, whoever that may be, for whatever department you work for. And you're going to complete the report. Man, this is super important. And I'm just going to tell you, searches a lot of times happen at really odd hours of the day, usually very early. Sometimes they can happen very late, but you're probably going to be really tired. And you're probably going to want to say, I'm going to set this stuff on my desk. It'll be here in the morning, and I'm going to come back and do it. I would advise against that. You need to get a rough draft of that report drafted and put together as quickly as possible. And so for me, I always at least typed up what I considered to be the important details and times as I saw it. I need to get that on paper before I left for the night, the morning, whatever time of day you're at. I need to get that down on paper. So I would just go ahead and put that down on paper, as painful it would be. It's going to be full of misspelled words and things everywhere, but I'm going to have it down, and that allows me to kind of put everything to rest in my head and just go home and chill. You may not be that way, but for me, I wanted to do that. But the things that are going to go into these reports would be the entry-exit log, the entry-exit photos, and you also want to create a photo log of what each picture is. And the photos themselves can be printed out. Yeah, it's kind of 1990. You probably don't want to do that. So you're probably going to have either a CD or a thumb drive of your photos. And again, that entry-exit log and your important details and times. Those are the three main parts that are going to go into your report. When do I want to have this complete? At least the latest I would want to have this complete is 48 hours after the end of the search. So if I complete a search at 9 a.m. on Monday, I need to be having that in the case file by 9 a.m. on Wednesday. A lot of your case files are digital electronic. It's going to log what time you put it in there. If I'm a defense attorney, if you put a crime scene search report in more than 2 or 3 days after the search, I'm kind of like, gosh, why'd that take so long? I may ask that question up on the stand. Why did it take you 2 weeks to get your crime scene report done? Or did you have to make some things up to put in there? What's going on? If it's in there within 24 hours, everything looks like it should. There's not a whole lot of questions to ask about that crime scene. It seems like a pretty good crime scene search. So, just my suggestions. There is no hard and fast rule. Some agencies do dictate those types of things to detectives and agents. But if it's up to you, I would say within 48 hours. So that pretty much would complete your basic crime scene processing from front to back. Really not a complicated process per se. Not as complicated as some of the things that we'll cover later on in the class. But all in all, it's obviously very imperative, and it's really the bedrock of detective work to be able to search for evidence, properly secure it, properly document it. So, hope that went well for you guys. If you've got any questions, feel free to text or email, especially about the practical exercise. I've kind of left that as an open assignment. Really no format for it. Just do it how you would do it. I want you to kind of have fun with it. I want you to experiment with it. But again, I would stick to those steps. And again, if you don't want to put a crime scene down, a crime scene search for your home, feel free to do it for a store. Feel free to do it for an outdoor area, whatever you see fit. But it's just an opportunity for you to showcase that, yeah, I kind of got the material. And really to have somebody that's done a bunch of these look at this and say, well, yeah, you kind of missed here, and let me really critique it, because there are a lot of y'all that are going to get into this field, and it's important to be able to do that stuff here in training before you get out into the real world. But again, if you got any questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Hope y'all have a good night.